This is a 1969 Chevy Corvair, one of only 6,000 ever made, and I put it on a 1996 Chevy S10 frame. So it's been a few days, about 41 as of filming this since I last put out a video, and that was a 20-minute compilation of building this monstrosity that I still don't have a name for. And yeah, so I figured I should probably start producing content again. I got a new job and I've been really busy with that, but I'm really excited to get back out in the garage and working on stuff. This is going to be kind of a different video. This is going to be like, if anyone wants to attempt to do this project, which I have a feeling not many people are going to want to, that they should watch this video first so they kind of can understand like some of the stuff that I went through, and just some things that I would do differently. So I'm going to try to make this a shorter video, so without further ado, let's get right into it. As you heard, yes, this is a 1969 Chevy Corvair. I got it when I was 12 years old, which is why there is a 12 on the door. And then it sat in my backyard for 10 years. And then when I was a little bit before I turned 23, I guess, my dad, brother, and I basically put the body on the S10 frame. And yeah, so it was in rough shape. There was no saving it. It was either going to become a parts car or scrap metal, and I didn't want that to happen either, so I found a compromise and I put it on an S10 frame, and it is a super reliable daily driver. I daily drive this thing, rain or shine, and yeah, it's just like a really good car. It has not let me down. That is a lie. It has let me down a few times. So it's not just an S10 frame, it is the chassis, the suspension, the running gear, the firewall, the floors, the engine, wiring harness, even the wheel wells are S10. It is literally a Chevy S10 with a Corvair body on top of it. That's the best way I can explain it. It is a single cab, short bed S10, 96, it's from mid-90s. That was the second generation S10, and the wheelbase is 108 inches, and the wheelbase on a Chevy Corvair is 108 inches. So we couldn't use a extended cab or four-door or anything like that. You could use a Blazer if you wanted to, but I wanted it to be rear-wheel drive and as low to the ground as possible. So we started with a very clean Chevy S10, cut the crap out of it until it looked like this. I'll put a picture up on screen. And then, just like a side note, I live in the Rust Belt, and I'm not going to drive this in the winter, but I still wanted to protect the frame, so like $30 worth of rust preventative paint, and I protected the frame, and I'm really happy with that, and it looks good. So gutting the car, we took a telehandler, which is a giant forklift, and picked up the car through the windows here, lifted it off, and we had already removed the engine. We had to cut out the front Corvair suspension because they welded it in. Whoever owned the car before me literally welded the suspension in. It's not supposed to be welded in. And we cut everything. We cut the floors, the firewall, the seats. Like, nothing remains. The only thing that remains of the original Corvair interior would technically be part of the back firewall, and that is the only thing that remains of the Corvair interior. So you had to do a lot of cutting, and as a matter of fact, I would probably just recommend cutting basically all of the firewall out except for the package tray. I would keep that because of the way that the frame comes into the cabin. So I would recommend doing that. Another note is body mounts and bed mounts on the S10, because, you know, it's a truck, so it has its own bed mounts. We were going to cut those off, but I don't remember why we didn't cut them off, and I'm so glad we didn't, because that ended up actually being used to help hold the body to the frame. Like, the bed mounts are now technically body mounts, so I'm glad we didn't cut those, and I'll explain a little bit more on that a little later. And then the rockers on the Corvair, we had to cut them and then bend them way out so it could drop over top of the S10 rockers, and then we bent them back and welded them all solid. Actually, we stitch welded them. We did spot welds and stuff like that. So that was just that. You know, there's going to be a lot of cutting, so I don't know if you would want to do this to like a really nice Corvair, unless you're going to do all the body work. But if you're doing this to like a rat rod Corvair that's been sitting in a field since the 80s, then yeah, knock yourself out. Reassembly. One important thing is the S10 is obviously much taller than a Corvair, so the cowl of the S10 sat about that much higher, and instead of cutting it out of the S10 like we should have done, we ended up cutting the cowl of the Corvair and then re-welded it in. And that's one thing I regret, because there was so much extra work when we should have just cut the S10 cowl. Again, I'll put some pictures up on the screen so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And then the reassembly process started. It took us about 2.5, 3 days to actually get the Corvair completely cut apart and mounted to the S10 frame. But I mean, it was pretty easy, you know, just cut everything that's in the way and hope it works. The reassembly process was like bending the rockers back. As a matter of fact, they look really good. I'll edit it so you can see a little closer. And then the firewall. The firewall is actually made out of scrap metal from a Toyota Hilux that I got from my cousin. This is what happened to the Toyota. Yeah, there wasn't much left of it when I was done with it, but the frame was rusted in half. So I built the firewall part of the firewall out of a Toyota Hilux bed, and I regret doing that just because I should have used a stronger metal, probably like 16 gauge, and on that Toyota it was like 18 gauge, maybe less. It was really thin metal, so the firewall is made out of really thin, crappy metal. Sorry, Toyota lovers. Then we go on to the gas tank, and the gas tank was a bit of a struggle. So on the S10 pickups, the gas tank runs parallel with the frame. As a matter of fact, the driver is actually sitting over top of part of the gas tank. And I thought that like I was going to be able to put back seats in this thing, so I needed to remove the gas tank and put a gas tank in the back. So the gas tank is from a first generation S10 Blazer, and it sits in between the frame rails where the spare tire used to fit. I'm actually really proud of how well that project went together. I had some roadblocks, but it ended up working really well. The one thing though is I am using a sending unit from a Blazer that has a 20-gallon tank, and this originally came with, I think, a 17-gallon tank. And then my filler neck holds an additional 2 gallons of gas. So I have a 22-gallon tank, basically. And because of that, my fuel gauge reads a little differently. So I could go about 150, 200 miles before the gas gauge actually starts going down. But once you get past that, like 150, 200 miles, and you've burned through about 5 gallons of gas, because this gets really good gas mileage, then the needle will start kind of reading more accurately. But it was pretty simple to do, you know, just power, ground, sending unit. The wiring is simple. I'd go over all of that on how to do that in the video. After the gas tank was in, I had to build a trunk floor, and this project took about a month to do. And basically I went to a junkyard, cut the bed out of a Chevy Silverado 2500, cut the floor of the bed out, and basically bent it so to match the contour of the trunk, and it was just like an awful way to do it. I don't recommend doing that. It took so much time. It looks like crap. I hate the way it looks. I'm not happy with it, but I'm not going to change it. So if you're going to put a trunk in it, which I recommend because you don't want it just to be open, find a different way to do it. You know, don't use a crappy truck bed. All right, moving on to the seat delete. This was a huge bummer for me because I'm a pretty practical guy. if I have a car that's designed to hold 5 to 6 people, I want it to be able to hold 5 to 6 people. And I couldn't do that because of the way that the frame comes up into the cabin, into the rear seat area. So I was like, that's okay, I'll just put the seats in between the frame rails, make it like a 4-seater, right? So the drive shaft tunnel will kind of ride in between the middle of them, kind of like how they do it on Mustangs. But the way that the S10 is, because again I use the floors from the S10, the way that it kicks up, we just couldn't do it. And so we had to put in a seat delete. We got some, I think it was like probably 16 gauge steel, and bent it up really nicely. We took it up to the local hardware store and had it bent up and welded it in, and it looks really nice. I actually use it to haul stuff all the time, but it just kind of sucks because if I want to like go and pick up friends or, you know, go somewhere, I can only legally hold one person. So that kind of sucks. And then the biggest undertaking, the reason that I did it this way, lowering the floors. Remember, I used the S10 floors, and then I was going to put in the original bench seat in this, so I could hold, in theory, 3 people. But the way that how low the Corvair is and how tall the S10 floors are, I couldn't put in a bench seat, so I was like, that's fine, I'll just put in bucket seats. Couldn't put in bucket seats either because they were so tall, and I was tall, that the roof was like right here. So, and I'm, you know, it wouldn't work. So we had to cut the floors, drop them 3 inches, and then get the lowest possible profile seats that I could find. These are Hyundai seats out of some mid-2000s coupe. I don't know, the car looked like garbage, but the seats look cool. I love the way the seats look. So that was just a huge undertaking. We had to cut the floors, bend up the metal, weld it all solid. It was a lot of work, but I wouldn't be able to drive this if I hadn't done that. And then we go into wiring. Like I said, the wiring harness is all S10, but as you can see, I got blinkers here, I got headlights there. So it was, yeah, see? Well, I guess the front ones aren't lighting up, but that's because the car's not running. It was pretty simple, really. The S10 that I used originally came with 2 headlights, so I had to do the wiring differently to work with the 4 headlights, and they worked great. And then on S10s, they have a 3rd brake light, and so I put the 3rd brake light in the rear window. I think it looks awesome. And then patch panel, I had to weld in this patch panel here, and I'm actually pretty proud of it. I think it looks great. The color matching is a little off, but I think it looks good. I bet you if I wouldn't have even mentioned that, you probably wouldn't have noticed that this entire lip here had been replaced. And the reason I did that is for the wheel wells. They bolt to the fender here. And one thing that I want to do is basically buy all of the patch panels I need and go around this car and just replace all the rusted out metal, patch it in, and then color match it. So the car is solid, it doesn't rust anymore, and it looks good, but it still looks original, you know? So that's one thing that I want to do. Then we go to the flip front hood. We're almost done. We go to the flip front hood, and I've always wanted a car with a flip front hood. I think flip front or tilt front is another way to say it. I think they're awesome. I love them. And the reason why is because the hinges on a Corvair wouldn't work because they would run into the firewall of the S10. I'm sure you could figure something out, but I like flip front hoods. And then the last thing I had to do was lower it, because remember, this was on a truck chassis, and trucks are naturally higher. So the front end sat about 5 inches higher. It looked like a gasser or squatted, which I hate that, but the gasser looked pretty cool. The gasser looked pretty cool. But that wasn't the look that I was going for. I'm going for more of a dirt track look, vintage race car. So we lowered the suspension 5 inches, and then the wheels rubbed really badly, so I had to put lower profile wheels on, and it's not bad. It's a little low. The skid plate on the cross member is about 3.5 inches off the ground, so you don't want to hit anything too fast because that'll take out your skid plate. Actually, the skid plate has saved my oil pan multiple times. It's getting pretty beat up, so I need to build a bigger skid plate. And then that's it, basically. As soon as we lowered it, the next day after we lowered it, I limped it to the next town over, had it aligned, and then cannonballed 2 hours to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in a completely untested car. The car had sat in my garage for like 8 months. I built it, didn't do any testing, and just drove it to the first car show of the season that inevitably got rained out, which was unfortunate. And it did great. And then I took it to another car show. That was kind of my first car show, and ever since then, I've been daily driving it to my new job. And all of my coworkers love the car. They think it's hilarious. And yeah, I don't know. It's just like a really good, reliable daily driver, and that's exactly what I wanted. A car that I can go to any auto parts store, buy a new part for it, and have it the same day. I've already had to replace a starter on this, and I just went to O'Reilly's, asked for a starter for a 96 Chevy S10 with a 2.2 liter. They went to the back, grabbed it, and I had a starter. And I can't really do that with a Corvair. No offense, Corvair owners. So yeah, it's just really nice to be able to do that. There's a few things that I wasn't able to make videos on because of my time crunch to get to the first car show. But the wheel wells, I used the S10 wheel wells, and then I extended them about 3 inches to be able to bolt up to the Corvair fenders. I put seat belts in, so I now have a proper 3-point harness. And then, if you notice, I don't know if you can see it on camera. Yeah, I'll just operate the camera from back here. But if you notice, I don't have a grill. How is this getting fresh air? Well, there's actually kind of 2 ways, but the main way is right there. That little hole right there where the original license plate holder was, and it's scooped up, and that feeds right into the radiator. And then inside the engine, I have started boxing off the radiator, and it keeps it cool. It's my reliable daily driver. It's kind of dirty, like I said. It's a daily driver. It's basically everything I asked for. This is exactly how I wanted this project to go, and it worked perfectly. I have a 1969 Chevy Corvair that I can drive anywhere. So that's kind of like a lowdown on some problems that I ran into, like having to cut the cowl of the Corvair versus the S10, or the trunk floor, or even the floors, how I had to lower the floors. There was a lot of hurdles to get over, but I hope if anyone else wants to do this, that they can learn from my mistakes and my experience and stuff like that. So yeah, the car is basically done. Let me rephrase that. Phase 1 of the car is done. I can drive it anywhere, and that's what I wanted. So phase 2 is I have some other stuff planned. I want to make a front splitter. I want to make a rear splitter. I want to basically make the car how I want it to look. Because right now it just looks like a Corvair, which is fine. But I have a vision of how I want it to look, and that's what I want to start working on next. I have a bunch of cardboard over there that I'm going to start mocking up some designs that I can then transfer to metal. And then I need to turbo it. We're going to turbo it, and then I maybe have an engine swap planned, because I don't know how long I want to go with the 4-cylinder turbo, right? I have something pretty awesome planned. But yeah, that's basically that. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments. I will gladly answer them. I love answering questions, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the build. Sorry I haven't uploaded in a while. Like I said, got a new job, just been really busy. But I'm excited to be working on this again, and I've started working on that car again, kind of in the background of things. And hopefully, maybe finish it soon. We don't know. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more of this stuff, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one.